Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
So let's revise today chapter 9 of the Gita. What took place during chapter 9 and some of the terms that you may have missed, we will provide a detailed analysis upon them. So the first section, which was verse 1 to 3 of chapter 9, we talked about the benefit of self-knowledge. So self-knowledge is the subject matter of the classes, and self-knowledge has a certain distinction which is different from ordinary worldly knowledge. When I say worldly knowledge, it means any knowledge that can be forgotten or has to be learned, even though self-knowledge is also learned in the terms of a class. However, self-knowledge cannot be forgotten. Now, the first point that we specified was Raja Vidya. That's one of the titles in the chapter 9. So Raja, king, Vidya, knowledge. So the king of knowledge. Self-knowledge is the absolute king of knowledge. There's no higher knowledge, more valuable knowledge than self-knowledge. Thus it's called Raja Vidya. This means there is nothing in this world that you could be attending or learning at any event or any seminar that could be providing higher value than Raja Vidya. Even though it appears like it's providing value because it's giving instantaneous enjoyment and gratification, but in the long run, there is no higher knowledge. And relative knowledge, which means worldly knowledge, there are many branches of. So, example, you are a doctor. Just being like a dentist, you can then go and specialize at a surgery. So the branches within branches within branches is relative to worldly knowledge. And these branches are endless. So this means that one can just keep attending one after the other, and they can try to improve their minds, be smarter, and know more, greater career, or you may be even impressed. It doesn't really matter. The point is their journey will never end. And not only that, but they will soon find is that the more they dig in, the more there is to find. And this is really frustrating at one point or the other. So compared to self-knowledge, self-knowledge is that knowledge which reveals the substratum of all relative knowledge. In other words, the self-knowledge is that knowledge which reveals the I or the self, which illumines the mind. Now, where does all knowledge take place? When you listen to knowledge through your ears or through your eyes, when you read it, where does all of that stimuli enter? Inside the mind. Now, self-knowledge is that knowledge which pervades the mind. That means that principle which is required for this knowledge in the mind to be validated for being existent, for being valuable, for being worthy, for being extraordinary, for being not so extraordinary. So in other words, all of the knowledge in the mind is pervaded by the consciousness principle, which we call Chaitanya Tattvam or Chaitanya Swarupam. And thus this knowledge, which is revealed through self-knowledge, is the illuminator of the mind, which means all of those branches that we have in our minds, that we love, that we really adore, and we sort of take, a lot of pride in sometimes, all of that relies on this substratum. So this means the person can know everything about everything, the whole universe, but one thing they will not know is in whose presence is this knowledge of the entire universe known to. Okay, so this means that if they don't know that one principle, then all of this knowledge is as good as useless. Thus, it is the king of knowledge. The second point is all relative knowledge cannot permanently remove sorrow and fear and worry and concern. It may remove it temporarily, of course, by providing us what is relevant to our lives in this stage, but it may not remove it, and it will not remove it permanently, because the person changes their interests, so what they learned becomes redundant sooner or later. Right? So they have to go into another branch of knowledge. And in comparison to self-knowledge, it is the only knowledge which is able to permanently solve the problem, which is to remove all sorrow and all worry by how? By re-identifying with limitlessness. Now, is your mind limitless? Never. Is your body limitless? Never. In other words, the only way out of suffering is to re-identify with what is inherently limitless. It cannot be in the mind, because the mind is aging, it's changing, it is subject to emotions. So we're putting the self in the correct place. How? Through Raja Vidya. Furthermore, self-knowledge has inspired many great poets. You know Rumi? A lot of great poems, very inspirational. And a lot of have already continue to do so, renounce kingdoms, at least back then. Today we don't have kingdoms, we have companies and jobs and businesses. So many people have renounced their, for example, Janaki, who has renounced his kingdom to pursue self-knowledge. In other words, he had everything he wanted, and then when he saw these rishis who are always peaceful, and while he's always worried about maintaining his palace and keeping his queen happy, he, on the other hand, has witnessed these rishis, and he says, well, I want to be like that. They're always peaceful and calm. So he renounced his entire kingdom and then pursued self-knowledge. So Janaka. Okay, now the second point is, this is the second title of the chapter, Raja Guhyam. Again, Raja means king, and then Guhya means secret. Okay, so it's the king of secrets. And why is it the king of, in other words, it's the greatest secret in the entire world. In other words, it is the greatest open secret in the entire world. Why? Because self-knowledge, the self cannot be perceived through the senses. In other words, it is beyond the mind and it is beyond the senses, which means that you can give an open book, a Vedanta book, to a CEO who is very successful in what they do, and yet they will not value the knowledge because their mind is not prepared, their intellect is not subtle to capture what is being portrayed, what is being said. In other words, all secrets that we find take time. And how do we find secrets? Through our perception. Whereas this knowledge, no matter how sharp our perception is, we cannot find the self because it is beyond perception, beyond the mind. So the only way to find it is how? By qualifying the mind through sadhana, through karma yoga, through upasana. And then when it's clear enough, when it's subtle, it's able to capture what is being spoken of. Then we said pratyaksha avagamam. In other words, knowledge of the self is realized directly. For example, if you read a book on being a, give me a profession.
Brain surgeon.
A lawyer, okay, great example. Brain surgeon, right? Pilot. Okay, if you read a book on brain surgery, like lawyer, then it's not going to turn you into a lawyer. Now, I know you're going to say it will, but it won't, because are you a lawyer with your child, right, with your friends? No, you're not. So it doesn't turn the person into a book. The person doesn't suddenly take on a character of a model of a lawyer, right? They're still a person. They just have lawyer knowledge. So the lawyer knowledge is separate, is other than the person. The person is free of that knowledge because they can learn how to be a brain surgeon tomorrow if they want. And sometimes if the job, pays more, they will gladly do so. So it proves that relative knowledge cannot turn the person into that knowledge. Only the mind can adapt to that knowledge for a while, but it can also forget that knowledge, can let go of that knowledge and take on different knowledge. Whereas self-knowledge, what does that do? The person directly realizes I am the whole, and the whole is I. We are not two. In other words, self-knowledge is the only knowledge which, well ascertained when it is done, it turns into a direct actuality. That means it is not separate. It's not something that I know about as an intellectual idea, like self-knowledge. The I is whole and complete. But the person who's saying that is just like, apart from that fact. In other words, the person who is making that claim understands fully what it means to say, I am the whole. Obviously, you cannot be referring to your body because your body is not just the whole. There's so much more than just the body. Then, dharmyam. This is the next idea. Self-knowledge is that knowledge which integrates your physical, emotional, and intellectual personalities to cooperate in harmony. In other words, all of the faculties are working together and they're talking with each other. Whereas other knowledge, for example, you learn about lawyer, the intellect likes to be very intellectually smart in that field, right? But then the emotional system has a system to go traveling and satisfy its emotional, accommodation and friends and family. All of that is emotional satisfaction. And then the physical personality has a little bit of, I want to exercise, I want to do some yoga, asana, and so on. So self-knowledge is that knowledge which creates a perfect synergy between all three personalities. Furthermore, it is that knowledge which, when well understood, creates a sense of unity. What does this mean? In other words, the self that I am is the same self in all. That's how a unity is created. And what does this do? It creates behavioral changes. The person is no looking at big differences between cultures and skin color and profession and judging and who's got bigger salary and who's got a bigger house. No. And even in confrontations, this is very important. The knowledge is so clear that the vision, when I say vision, I mean the buddhi, the intellect, constantly there is a knowledge that the one same common factor that is shared between all of us, that we all are, is the self. And that self I am. This means that if I hurt you, if I put some rude comment on Facebook or YouTube about anything, who is that going to? Another person who through their eyes is looking, and where is that knowledge being found? In their minds. And what is the mind pervaded by? The self. And you are also that person who uses the eyes to see the Facebook post that goes into my mind, also pervaded by the self. In other words, the content of the entire universe is the self. So whatever I do, whatever I say, it's ultimately only speaking to myself. So this happens little by little. People think, I can get away with it because the person's over there and I'm over here. And I'm not going to get caught. I'm behind my computer. I'm not even going to put my real name behind, right? So they feel safe. But over time, this stacks up and creates more disharmony between the physical, emotional, and the intellectual personality. And then eventually, it creates a physical sickness or depression or some kind of illness. So they will change their life around, hopefully. Okay. Susukham, this is the next point. Susukham kartum. So relative knowledge, whatever you learn, lawyership, brain surgery, requires consistent effort. So it's a constant process of maintenance, and the law system, for example, is going to be updating constantly. So you have a lot of work, a lot of research, and if you're in a research field, right, it's a constant attending to. And if someone else discovers something, I'm like, well, I should be discovering. So you're constantly engrossed in this world of looking deeper in this relative knowledge. Whereas self-knowledge, effortless. Why? Because you don't have to do anything to be, right? You're helpless to yourself. So in other words, self-knowledge is that knowledge which, when understood, when firmly ingrained in the mind, integrated in in every personality of the person, leads to effortlessness. In fact, it is effortless to be. But not just to be, because anyone can say, I'm just going to be, right? But to be in peace. Know what it means to say, all I need to do is just relax. In fact, I don't need to relax because I already am complete, whole, and full. So, in this way, chapter 9, now we put them together. The title is Raja, Vidya, Raja Guhyam. In other words, the subject matter of chapter 9 is Nirguna Ishwara Jnanam. Nirguna. That means it is attributeless. And we'll talk about what Nirguna means now, and we will look deeper into Ishwara, and we will bring this vision of oneness together so we can understand it well. Now, one qualification that Krishna specified in chapter 9 is Shraddha. Before you say the word faith, we will put that aside for now. What is Shraddha? Shraddha means having an open mind. The results may not be immediate, right here, right now. I may have confusion, I may have doubts, I may sort of question if this is working for me. Am I ready? Is it too early in my life, right? Should I be waiting? Is my mind even getting this? Am I fooling myself? Is my I in the ahamkara, or is it in the proper self? Is it in the true chaitanya swarupam? All of these small doubts may come. What does it mean to say vision of oneness? And am I really living it? Am I fooling myself? Is this working? Could there be something a little bit better out there? Am I missing something? Am I too late? Should have I gone a little bit early in the program? So all of these small doubts will come here and there. So Shraddha means, despite these doubts, which may keep coming or may not, despite them arriving from different angles, I choose to continue having an open mind in the light of these doubts and contemplating until each one of these doubts is resolved one by one. How do you do that? Through your own efforts. How do you do what I mean when I say effort? Through Vedanta Vichara. Vichara means inquiry. Looking into it. Taking your time and going, what is this? Why is this happening again? What is the specific doubt here? What do I not understand? And then you break it down into smaller parts and you can look at it, each part specifically. So this means having an open mind and diligently persisting amidst this knowledge as all of these doubts one by one through time get resolved through your efforts. In other words, I do not reject the pramana, which means of knowledge, pramana, and I do not reject the acharya because all they are there is to clear all of the doubts and provide this vision of unity. That's verse 1 to 3. Now, verse 4 to 10 is the central theme of chapter 9. And what is the central theme of chapter 9? The true nature of Ishwara. This means Nirguna Ishwara, Para Prakriti per chapter 7, or consciousness principle. Now, I said a few words, Nirguna, Ishwara, Para Prakriti, Brahman. What does this all mean? We will now bring a unity to these words. The first question is, what does Ishwara mean? Let's bring resolution to this word Ishwara. Now, Ishwara has two natures, but before we get into that, we'll do something down to earth that we can all relate to. How is it that Ishwara pervades everything in this entire world, including the very eyes that are looking at this person made up of different components? Okay. Suppose you take a tree. So we'll draw a little tree here. Okay. Now a tree is a name and a form. And we will call this name form in the English language tree. Okay, it depends what language you speak. The point is there's a name and form to whatever we identify. Now, the point is, whichever language you speak, when a Turkish person sees a tree, and a Malaysian or a Hindi or a Croatian or whatever nationality you are, when they see a tree, they have a different name. But the point is, we all have an idea. It has a bark, and there's a general purpose. It has leaves, and it gives life like a nest. It absorbs the sun. It has photosynthesis, and it gives oxygen, it takes carbon dioxide. So there's a lot of features that we all have in common. It doesn't matter what language we speak. Now, a tree is ultimately what? Wood. So we'll put wood. So inherently, when you look at when you remove this tree name and form, and you look at, well, what is a tree? It's made out of wood. So you have another name and form. We'll put name form called wood, and this is name form called tree. Okay, now wood is made up of cellulose and lignin. Okay, so what is cellulose and lignin? They are molecules. So wood is made up of molecules. And what kind of molecules? Cellulose and lignin. Okay. Now cellulose and lignin are in themselves complex structures. For example, cellulose is made up of atoms. Okay, now you can say, now we'll put atoms. Now what kind of atoms? Okay, so it has carbon, not just carbon, but 6 carbon atoms. It has hydrogen, 10 atoms of hydrogen, and oxygen, 5. In other words, if you have 7, see it has 6, if you have 7 carbon atoms, it is not cellulose. If you have 4 oxygen atoms, it is not cellulose. In other words, the exact number, the exact structure of certain combinations of atoms need to come together in order to create a molecule called cellulose, which itself serves an intelligent function. What kind of function? In this case, by putting it together with lignin, we can also replicate this process for lignin. You put them together, and what do you have? You have wood. So in other words, when all of them come together, they create an intelligent function called a tree. Now, how many functions does a tree serve? It protects you, right? It gives birds enjoy themselves. Kookaburras can sing, and you even enjoy that because they have a tree. We use trees to, in fact, you're now standing on a tree right now, right? And we use it for fire. So there is not one single aspect in this order that is useless. It all serves a very intelligent purpose. Now we can keep going and we can put carbon in itself. You know, it has a specific boiling point, a melting point. Each one of these has a specific attribute which goes down to the decimal place, to a fraction of a decimal place. So you can see how accurate everything in this entire universe is. Now you can even put this down into subatomic particles like electron and proton. And you can even go, you know, the Hadron Collider, the idea is to collide 2 particles. Then when they hit at high speed, they explode and it's supposed to release a God particle. But we're not going to, you know, okay, you can put God particle. But we can also even go smaller, boson. And then you can say God particle, okay? Hopefully it's a theory. Now, so what do we have in common? We have form, okay, tree, nama, rupa, form. We have form, wood, form, cellulose, form, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, form, particles, form, boson, form, etc. In other words, every level in itself requires what? How do you put together, who says to put 6 carbon, 10 hydrogen, and 5 oxygen? What is that? Knowledge. You need knowledge in order for this to happen. In other words, at every level, there is all knowledge and all power. Now, why do I say power? Because if you have knowledge, you still need power to put it together, right? And you need the material. So all knowledge at the tree level, all knowledge and power at the wood level, all knowledge and power at the cellulose level, and lignin, all knowledge, power, all the way at every single level, there is all knowledge and all power. Take your brain, for example. Right now, you're looking at this pen. So what's happening is okay, suppose this pen is like I'm holding a gun or something. Any other ideas? I always go for guns for some reason. So your eyes are now looking at this, and the visuals of this are entering into the brain. Now we'll just put the brain into a little bit of a specific order. The prefrontal cortex of your brain is used for cognition, decision making, okay, just generally. So suppose I take this gun from up and I point it towards Lloyd. Now suddenly his prefrontal cortex is going to now decide what needs to be done. So what's going to happen besides just the prefrontal cortex? It's going to then refer to the hippocampus. What's the hippocampus? That which is used to remember and to recall. In other words, it's going to use the emotion. Where's the emotion going to come from? Amygdala. So the amygdala uses to assess the emotion, whether this is worthy of fight or flight. Should come or should go. Now, the amygdala is going to contact hypothalamus, which is going to release the proper emotion corresponding to what this means to point a gun. Because the hypothalamus is that which releases the emotion throughout the body, and then we feel joy, happiness, etc. Not only that, but it's also going to contact the pituitary gland, is used to release hormones to the testes and to the ovaries. So all of these functions are going to work together to produce a response, an emotional response, which is going to then flood through the brainstem into the appropriate limbs of the person, and then either they're going to move their legs and go out the door, or they're going to stay and do whatever they do. Or maybe they're going to move their mouth and go, please don't shoot me, or whatever it is, right? So in other words, all of these functions are working together, and they're all pervaded by what? All knowledge, all power. For example, the hypothalamus cannot release emotions. Who tells it to release emotions? You need knowledge for that. And what actually releases the emotions into the body? Power. In other words, all knowledge, all power at the visual level, at the hippocampus level, at the prefrontal cortex level, at the hypothalamus level, at the pituitary gland level, at this brainstem level, all knowledge, all power operating even right now in the very person, which is made up of different components, and every component is pervaded by all knowledge, all power, which makes all of these limbs come together and perform in a perfectly synchronous, harmonious way to interface with the environment. Now, what do we just establish? Every succeeding or preceding form requires all knowledge, all power in order to perform its very specific function. And what is the truth of all knowledge, all power? Before you answer, can you have knowledge and power if it's unconscious? Like a person, for example. A lot of knowledge and a lot of power, but they're unconscious. No. So in other words, what is the truth of all knowledge and all power? Awareness. Now, why? Because without awareness, all knowledge, all power cannot do anything. It needs to be conscious in order to put together cellulose, to put together the particles, the boson. All of these forms need to be put together through all knowledge, all power, but that can only be done how? By being pervaded in and through by consciousness or awareness. This consciousness or awareness is what we call para-prakriti or nirguna. And all of these forms, which are created by a power, when Brahman wields his power, called Maya or Prakriti, which is made up of the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, then all of this comes. And this is what we call Apara Prakriti or Saguna. Why? Because wherever you look, it has attributes. From whichever angle, from the microscope level, from a telescope level, you can always perceive it. Now, when I say Saguna or Apara Prakriti, that constitutes what we call Jagat. Jagat means what? World. Now, what's the definition of the world? Time, space, and objects within time, space. For example, all of these things have something in common. They all need to be sustained. How? Through time. They all need their own individual space to be accommodated. and they themselves are objects. In other words, what's the definition of this entire world? Jagat. What does Jagat mean? Time, space, and all objects in time, space. Both the potential, those that are in potential, which are not yet expressed, that included in Jagat, and those which are manifest right now. In other words, Jagat means everything that is unmanifest, that is yet to manifest, and what is manifest right now. For example, the iPhone came out. Now, that idea started out a few years ago already. It was already, going on. So, if you just look at maybe 20 years ago, there was no such thing as a phone that could perform, touch controls. So, it doesn't mean that it didn't exist. It was part of Jagat, except it was in potential. Now, when the right circumstances come by the needs of the people, by the needs of the jivas, then the jivas start to look for a new solution, and that solution is then drawn, and then that drawing is called going from potential into manifestation. Now, when I say draw, I mean it's not here now, but we have an idea. Like we have an idea of a device, or we have an idea of putting an aeroplane in the sky. So what do? We think about it, we entertain the idea, and then we start to draw based on what? On thoughts alone. So what are thoughts? That which converts the potential into manifestation. So all we are living today is what has started out as a thought, and eventually has led into manifestation. Thus, what is the world that we're living in today? How do you explain the world today? A world which consists of thoughts, which started off at some point, and then the person has put them into effect, and then they provided feedback, and then someone else thought, I want to improve this, and then when they did improve, they created another product, and that product captured more audiences, and then other people saw, well, maybe we could make some money on that, so let's improve onto that, and they created another product, and then today we are a society which is reflecting based upon endless series of actions which have taken place, which were at some point in potential. When we say Ishwara, what does Ishwara consist of? Two natures, Saguna, Aparaprakriti, and Paraprakriti, Nirguna. This is what we call the lower nature, and this is what we call the higher nature. And what is Ishwara? Once the world, when Brahman has wielded, now when I say when, don't take that as a time-based event, because remember, time comes only when the world comes. So don't get tricked by that word when, as in Brahman was in time, and at some point he wielded his power when 5 o'clock came, and then suddenly that Maya is now operating as this world. So when Brahman wields his power called Maya, then from the aspect of that creation, of the manifestation, we call that Ishwara. So therefore Ishwara consists of two natures, which is the higher nature, consciousness principle, and the lower nature, which is attributes. Now we ask the question, what compels this world to manifest? So what's the reason for this world being manifest as it is today?
Does karma drive the causal body?
Yeah, that's close. So in other words, the world is a reflection of the total samskaras of all beings. Samskaras means what? All of the habitual tendencies that every jiva has, the world is created in accordance to provide an environment for the jiva with those samskaras to perform action to exhaust those samskaras. For example, if there is a samskara to swim, then in order to swim, I need to give you an environment, first of all. I need to give you an ocean, right? But I cannot just give it to you as a thought. You cannot just imagine. Every thought has a way to be expressed. It needs to be expressed how? Physically. So when there is a samskara, which is in the causal body, the karana sharira, it then needs what? It needs a sukshma sharira, a subtle body, a mind, in order to convert that impression into an entertaining thought, into a possibility. But not only can it entertain a thought, that thought needs to what then? Be converted into a physical expression through the sthula sharira, through the physical body. Therefore, this world here as it stands. Why is it here? If you want to ask the question why, the simple reason is beginning anadi karma compels this world to be created to help all jivas facilitate the exhaustion of their karma. If you have a desire to write, you want to be a poet, then you can't just, and you need to get that out on paper. So not only do I need to give you a mind to think how to write, but I also need to give you, Maya needs to make an environment which is conducive for a writer, which is a pen. It creates a pen and it creates a paper. Thus we have today Nama Rupa called pen and paper. And it resulted because of what? A jiva at some beginningless beginning point in time had a desire to transfer the mind through a instrument which has ink, or in those cases they used scribing, onto another surface. Thus came an idea of pen and paper. At some point we had an idea to put a man into space, so we did what? We created a potential, a possibility to send a machine by using the laws of gravity, by sending a thrust that's strong enough to be able to pull away from the Earth's gravitational field out of the atmosphere and send it into space. In other words, why do we have space shuttles today? Because at some point it too was just a thought that we entertained, that we extracted out of a potential, and then we created a correct instrument called a space shuttle and the rocket in order to fulfill, to exhaust that karma. So this entire world that we have today is nothing but millions and millions and millions of collections of needs that at some point needed to be exhausted. Thus came an appropriate instrument to facilitate that exhaustion. Furthermore, that exhaustion happens why? Wherever there's a person who wants to sing or to write, do they do that to suffer? Right? I'm going to write, I'm going to suffer really terribly. No. So everyone does exhaust their karma for the sake of enjoying the very action of exhausting.
Even people that write out of suffering do it out of enjoyment.
Yes, yes. Right, even like crying, people, I want to cry, I want to watch a movie, I want to cry. So even though crying on one hand has a sort of a, like a gloominess to it, or maybe not, at the same time it has this other effect of joy. It's like, well, I'm crying, I'm letting myself out. So all karmas are exhausted for the sake of the jiva, whether it is a single or a group of jivas or a nation, for the sake of enjoying the fructification of that karma. Now, let's talk about nirguna features. Okay, so we're going to stick with nirguna now. And we're going to give you several features. The first feature is all-pervading. Nirgunam. All-pervading means it is nowhere specifically, because if you specify a location to it, is it nirgunam? No. So when I say the truth of you is nirgunam, is paraprakriti, it means what? You're nowhere specifically. So the moment I particularize or localize myself to this body, that is contradictory to the nature of who I am. And what's the nature of who I am? Paraprakriti, which is all-pervading. Think of it this way. All pervasiveness is. It just is. The moment you put a body, that all pervasiveness still is, however, there's now a body. So that all pervasiveness now experiences the world experiences the world how? Through that very body which is being given birth. Now you put another body. All pervasiveness still is. However, now it is pervading two bodies. So now two bodies look at each other and go, oh, who are we? Okay? And now a new body gets born. All pervasiveness, nirgunam, still is. But now there is three bodies. Now three bodies are coming together. Who are we? Okay? All pervasiveness still is. Now the two of them make babies. Now the babies start asking themselves in 5 years or 10 years, well, actually 40 years now, right? Because they're very late now. Oh, who are we? Now they make children. Remember, all pervasiveness still is. And those children are generated. How? Because there is a physical body, there is a stula sharira, there's a sukshma sharira, and every sukshma sharira can think on its own. It has not only conscious awareness of itself, but it also is aware of the entire world. But because it looks at itself as just localized to this little body mind, it assumes from very early on that indeed that is who I am. And then a new jiva gets born, and it assumes the exact same issue. And then a new jiva gets born. That's why we say ignorance is beginningless. Again, whenever you attribute nirgunam to a certain place, like I saw God today, I saw Lord today, that is only speaking about saguna ishwara, the lower nature, because you saw it through your senses. Or terms like Father in Heaven, Vaikuntha, Kailasa, all of these terms are very popular and they are very, they're very prominent. So all of these places are located somewhere, which means that at some point I will be going or traveling somewhere and I will maybe reap the benefits or I will receive divine love from my deity. Also, if the person stays at Saguna, Ishwara, and they never proceed on to Nirguna, we call that incomplete spirituality. Okay, so this person means they have to progress onto Nirguna Jnanam. Saguna is only for the sake of, I'll talk about what Upasana is soon. Saguna Upasana is only for the sake of purifying the mind so that I can move on to Nirguna Jnanam. Do not stay at Saguna no matter what. That's the basic instruction. In other words, Saguna culminates to Nirguna. I used this example before. There were two disciples who converted into a parable. And the master wanted to test if these disciples had really been paying attention. Because it's easy to say the truth of me is all-pervading. So the Acharya said to them, go out and feed a cat. I thought that's an easy instruction. However, just make sure when you do feed a cat that nobody's around watching. So one of the disciples thought, fantastic, I can do this easy. So one of the disciples found a very quiet time in the evening and fed the cat. The other disciple came back 3 days later and said, sorry, I couldn't find a place or a time where there was nobody watching. What do you mean? Says the guru. Well, I was watching. The cat was watching. Okay? So this is a perfect example to demonstrate what it means to say that it is one understanding of intellectual. I'm all-pervading. Oh, sorry, let me feed the cat. I fed the cat. But it's something totally different to understand this so truly, so deeply, that you genuinely come up and say, I was there, I was watching, and you're not lying, you're not pretending like you've understood this. It is your genuine understanding. So in this way, the two disciples exposed how well they've been paying attention, right? In other words, the first disciple did what? Separate, because what does it mean to say, I fed the cat and there was nobody there? What does this mean? It means even though they have understood Vedanta, that I am the whole, they have still made a fundamental mistake. I am other than the whole. I am apart from the whole. Thus, it doesn't matter that I was watching. It's about others watching, right? So in other words, they're excluding themselves. They're still identified with what? The individual body, mind, intellect. Whereas the other disciple recognizes that the truth of who I am is nirgunam, all-pervading. Thus, where is there where I am not? In this way, jnani, if you want to put a feeling to it, how does a jnani, quote, feel, one who has deeply understood this knowledge? Think about it. One who has firmly understood that the nature of who I am is all-pervading feels at home no matter where they go. Whether it is a person's, a stranger's house, whether it is at the station, whether it is at work, whether it is with someone that's on the street who they don't know. Why? Because their vision is what? Always on that truth, which is the truth of everyone. The one truth without the second. Thus, where is their difference? So how does a jnani feel? as though at home no matter where they go. Nobody is more special or less special. It is all the one all-pervading self. Feature number 2, avyaktaha. In other words, it is the truth of nirguna is beyond sensory perception. I cannot sense it. I cannot hear it. I cannot feel it. I cannot smell it. I cannot taste it. I cannot see it. All of that belongs to saguna. In other words, whenever the person says, this is a common phrase that goes around, you know, I'm getting this. I sense there's a person watching. You hear that one? Huh? I feel like there's a person and I am that self. Wrong. Why? Because you spoke about it. You told me about it, right? It's a feeling, it's a sense. It doesn't matter how subtle it is, whether it's a thought or an emotion, the moment I speak of it, the moment I say anything about it, the moment I point out, it is not it. Why? Because anything that you can point out belongs to saguna. That's what means saguna. It is an attribute. An attribute of what? A feeling. A very subtle one. It doesn't matter. Even in meditation, people who go into nirvikalpa or savikalpa, it doesn't matter. And I say, I was at one, you know, there was nothing, right? I was just pure and I was just free. And that's who I am. I am freedom. Already that's a mistake. Because the fact is, awareness is that principle in whose presence the feeling or the presence of nothing is still illumined. So that means there's nothing you can say about nirgunam at all. Neti, exactly. Feature number 3. Mithya jagat adhishtanam. In other words, Ishwara is the support of the unreal mithya world. Now, why did I say unreal? Why is the world unreal? Or apparently real, or seemingly real? Because from a dreamer's standpoint, the world is real, yeah? Absolutely, there's no question. We don't question the dream. So from a dream person's standpoint, the world that is being manifest is absolutely real. But from the waker's standpoint, that very world, which 1 second ago was very real, and a lot of things took place. You went to a wedding, you know, you spent so many dollars on it. You went on a plane ticket and you traveled across the world, and there was drama, you know, you made kids and you made money. Now, from the waker's standpoint, that entire world is unreal. It was only a world of appearance. So in the same way, the mithya world that we're experiencing, when I say we, I'm talking about the BMI, the body, mind, intellect, which is experiencing this world, is seemingly real from the standpoint of the body, mind, intellect. From the standpoint of this individual. This individual referring to the 3 bodies or the 5 sheets. However, it is unreal from the standpoint of Ishwara, from the standpoint of Paraprakriti. Now you're going to say, why? Give me logic for this. Okay, suppose there's 2 bangles. We'll call this bangle a golden bangle, and this will be an earring. So this goes hello earring, and this one goes hello bangle. From the respective points of views, they're both real to each other. Why? Because their vision is on the various attributes, apara prakriti, that both of them have. The both of them are inherit. How? Through their karma, of course. And what generated that? The power of Maya. Now, suppose these 2 bracelets, who are generally looking for some help, they go to an ashram, or they go to a little venue, and they find a golden ornament Swami who is a ring. Okay, so now the Swami ring goes, the truth of who you are and the truth of this entire world is one. And then the two golden ornaments go, well, how is that? And we'll be looking over each other. You know, we always see differences. You know, I want to be, you know, they got like, they're chain. More people want them. You know, they're more attractive. And what's the other one? Earring. And then this one, the chain, has jealousy issues because the earring's always worn higher. So they're like, oh no, they get higher privileges. You know, I'm lower and they're higher. And then this earring is like, well, you know, the ear's kind of dirty. I have to hang around in this dirty place. But you sort of have this, you know, everyone's looking at you and admiring you. You're so special. You know, so there's all this drama is going on because of individual characteristics. And it's genuine, right? And then the Swami goes, you know, the truth of who you are is one and the same without a second. Well, what do you mean it's without a second? There is a second here. Well, the truth is you are both gold. And I am also gold. We definitely share different characteristics, no doubt. But the inherent nature is gold only. Both ornaments are real from their respective standpoints. But if you look at their truth, which inherits the entire universe, which is gold only, are they real? No. In other words, where my focus goes determines whether this world is absolutely real or whether this world is apparently real. It is apparently real how? If I acknowledge number one, there is indeed an apara prakriti difference, and I have no doubt about that. It's called vyavaharika, transactional reality. But at the same time, that world is of the one same content pervading every single ornament, whether you want to talk about a jiva, a mind, a thought, a word, a doubt, a worry, concern, and feeling, you know, uplifted, feeling depressed. All of these are what? Individual forms of different ornaments, and they're all pervaded by the one same gold. Thus, the earring walks out, and now you call him a jnani. The other one's still kind of contemplating, thinking, what does all this mean? Now, the jnani still sees the world, goes, well, you're still the same person that I saw before, except what's the difference? There's an understanding that the truth of me and this entire world is one without a second. So this brings great relief to the jnani. Now, next point, number 4. Asanga swarupaha. In other words, the truth, that nirgunam is free from all impurities. What does this mean? Free from impurities of the world. Often we think when something dirty touches your clean cloth, then the clean cloth will take on the dirt from the contamination. However, this is not the case of nirguna. In other words, saguna does not sully nirguna Ishwara, the higher nature of Ishwara. Now, what do we mean by this? Just imagine space. Imagine there's a foul smell here. Someone pulls out a banana, and it takes over the room. Now, has that contaminated the space, the smell?
No, just the air. Not the space, just the air.
If the air, the foul smell of air, has contaminated the space, what's the implications of that? It means that no other smell can ever get a glory of its own. You can't ever bring a little perfume, because if you spray perfume, right, it's too late. Now the space is contaminated with the banana. But the fact is, if you just remove the smell, it shows what? That the space, even though it appeared like it inherited the characteristics of the smell, it actually hasn't, because it is always free of what it accommodates. In the same way, Ishwara is that the higher nature is that which accommodates everything, including the very bodies that are listening now, but it is always free of what it accommodates.
Because you can extract the foul air, but you can't extract the space.
Exactly, because space is just space. It just serves to accommodate whatever you put into it. You can put a nice conversation or a not so nice conversation. The conversation content never influences the space. Okay, next point. Ishwara is the srishti, sthiti, and laya karanam. It's the sustainer, it's the manifestor or the creator, or the cause, you can say, the sustainer, and the changer or the sweeper. I know you're going to say destroyer, but if you think about changer, it transforms one to the other. For example, when I say changer, when you burn wood and it turns into ash, have you destroyed the wood? Or it's, you can also say you've changed the constituents of the wood into ash. You haven't gotten rid of the wood. You haven't destroyed it. And even if you were to burn that ash 10,000 more times, the vapor is going to go elsewhere. So in other words, Ishwara is that one who changes or sweeps away into something different.
So that underpins that matter can neither be created nor destroyed.
Now this is going to create a doubt. And the doubt goes like this. It sounds like if Ishwara is the creator and the sustainer and the sweeper or the changer, it sounds like Ishwara is the cause of all of our suffering, like an earthquake. After all, the earthquake was created, it was sustained, and by its sustenance, it certainly killed people. So this also now brings another problem of Ishwara accumulating punya and papa karma. However, this is not the case. For example, we'll take the light in this hall, okay? Just one big light. Suppose two people come, and both of them commit some crime. They, pickpocket each other. Now, whatever takes place in the room, the light does not inherit any of that papa karma, which was performed by the individual person or the individual thought. In the same way, when you bring a very beautiful wedding or something that uplifts the environment or a song, the light completely remains free of the activity in the room, in what it accommodates, and it simply does what? It illumines the activity so that the activity can take place. For example, if you turn off the light and the windows are closed, then nothing can happen. I can't even steal your stuff because I don't know where your pockets are. And we cannot have any kind of a party because I don't know where you are. I have to find you. So in other words, in the same way, Ishwara's higher nature is the illuminating principle, which illumines and makes everything possible. Consciousness is free of the body, and yet it also enlivens the body. In other words, without consciousness, the body cannot do what it does. It cannot see, it cannot smell, it cannot do anything. And yet also it is not a product. It is not a part of the body. Okay, verse 11, we talked about why is there samsara. Samsara means mixture of pain and pleasure. We don't just mean, samsara doesn't just mean suffering. It just means because the reality of the world is there's not just suffering here. There's also beautiful things. So samsara means there's a mixture. Sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's unpleasant and so on. And this samsara, remember, causes ongoing birth and death. So samsara is caused by ignorance of nirguna Ishwara, ignorance of para prakriti. For example, if you think about nirguna, it is beyond time and space. We understand that. It is not accommodated by time and space. It is also attributeless. So there's nothing you can give onto nirguna, because the moment you give something, it becomes saguna already. It also means you cannot think it, you cannot sense it, you cannot enjoy it or not enjoy it. Why? Because it simply illumines whatever enjoyment is present in the body, mind, intellect, whatever non-enjoyment is present in the body, mind, intellect. There's nothing to say about it. Its nature is fullness, but you cannot give anything to it, because the moment you do, you've already turned it into partiality. See, so what does limitless mean? Think about it. What is nirguna, which is limitless? What does this mean? There is not two. Because the moment you add something else, what happens? They're both limiting each other now. Right? This one goes, well, I want to be you and I want to be you. So what does limitless mean? Oneness. Okay? So nirguna means it is one. And it cannot be contemplated. You can't think it and go, oh, I've got it. I know who the self is. Can't do that.
As soon as you put a limit or a boundary to anything,
yeah,
you've created an inside and an outside.
Yeah, it's called a vritti. You created a thought out of it. You've turned it, you've limited it into a personal, subjective thought. Now, knowledge without nirguna jnanam. Remember the only two principles in reality, nirguna and saguna. If you don't have knowledge of nirguna, where is all of the attention innocently and helplessly and choicelessly going to go? To saguna. And what is saguna? Always limited. Because I just explained, what does limitless mean? There is no two. Now, whatever is limited, I always I'm concerned about its limitations because it's missing this, so I chase for this. It's missing that, so I chase for that. So there is no end of stopping because my attention is innocently on Saguna Ishwara because I do not know about that which is limitless, one without a second. In other words, where does the attention of a normal samsari go? Onto what is always changing. That's the only thing a person can know. What is changing all day long? My emotions are changing, my family is changing, cars are changing, weather's changing, day and night's changing, every second's changing, body movement's changing, right? Everything's changing. And what is change? Apara prakriti. In other words, the person's constantly going to be looking for something more because they do not have knowledge of nirguna, Ishwara. Which means also all security, all joy, all happiness, all peace, all contentment is going to depend on what? Onto that which inherently does not have permanent peace, security, joy, contentment, which is aparaprakriti or saguna. In other words, it decays, it dies, it changes. So what does this cause? Frustration. I had it, but now it's gone. I thought I was enlightened, but now it's gone. I thought I was feeling, extraordinarily uplifted, but now it's gone. I thought I was, but this is also the good news if you think about it. This is the good news about Dvaita, because even the sadness doesn't last. So if someone's severely depressed, right, they usually say, well, at some point in my life I was depressed. That also goes. So the point there is Dvaita is not all too bad, right? So it gives us an opportunity for one and the other. Okay, summary. Why is there samsara in this world? Answer. Ignorance of paraprakriti knowledge causes me to look for security in impermanent aparaprakriti world. And that is choiceless. Now, looking into samsara a little bit deeper, we'll put this into 4 stages. What causes samsara? Stage 1. This is how samsara actually happens for an individual. Mokasha. Mokasha. Okay, what is mokasha? Owning to beginningless avidya, ignorance, is going to create false hope. What kind of false hope? I'm looking for permanent security, permanent contentment in an impermanent world. Because to me, this world is real. Therefore, what's going to produce? Owning to my false knowledge about this world, because I don't have nirguna jnanam, I don't have paraprakriti, what do I then do? I try to make this world work for me. In other words, every action is going to be based on a false hope. False hope originates out of false knowledge. And what false knowledge is? Avidya, beginningless ignorance. And what is the primary false knowledge? I am this body, mind, intellect. And this body, mind, intellect always wants something more. It always wants to satisfy itself. So every action ends up going into satisfying the body, mind, intellect. In other words, every action is a false hope. Okay, mokasha, living in false hope, stage 1. Stage 2, mokha karma. Okay? Karma means activity. I do useless activity in order to fulfill my false hopes. So, false knowledge leads to false hope. In order to fulfill my false hope, I then have to address or take into consideration false activity that is out of alignment with reality. For example, today, if you want an example of this, go get a book of World Guinness Book of Records and you'll see what I mean by false action. For example, you have a man who wants to go in a glass cage with scorpions for the sake of name and fame, right? So in other words, he has what? He has knowledge. What kind of knowledge? False knowledge. And what's the knowledge? It's based on that, to be someone in this world, I have to do something. So that produces false hope, right? Because in order to do something, to be someone, I then need to do something extraordinary. So I have false hope based on my false knowledge. In order to fulfill my false hope, I have to then do this useless activity called being in the cage with scorpions or snakes, or pulling, a jumbo jet with your ears or something. I've seen all of this activity is going on for the sake of fulfilling the moksha and moksha karma. Okay, next stage, moksha jnana, false, useless knowledge. To learn, to fulfill a false hope, I then need to apply false or useless knowledge, useless action. But the useless action needs knowledge. I have to know how to pull an airplane or go inside and keep myself calm with scorpions. So then what I'm going to do, I'm going to look for useless knowledge, moksha jnana, in order to fulfill in order to do my false action, to fulfill my false hope, which is based on false notions. Now, what does this lead to? Vichetaha. Vichetaha means wrong thinking. Owning to false notions, producing false hope, motivating for useless action, causing useless search of knowledge, then I conclude what? That the way to fame and name is to pull an aeroplane with my ears, or to go with scorpions, or to play with snakes, and so on. So it leads to wrong thinking. What am I talking about when I say wrong thinking? In a spiritual world, wave your hands up in the air like nobody cares. Just praise and say your names to Krishna and Jesus, and one day you'll be in Vaikuntha, you'll be in heaven. That kind of false, incorrect thinking. In other words, this drives the person to look in wrong directions.
What was the Sanskrit for number 4?
Vichetaha, wrong thinking. Okay, verse 12 to 19. We have spoken about samsara. Now we're going to speak about remedy to samsara. Remedy to samsara is bhakti. First, bhakti does not mean a single sadhana. Bhakti is a series of sadhanas which culminate to nirguna jnanam, or jnana yoga. Okay, so that's what true bhakti is supposed to do. It's supposed to cause me to eventually come to Vedanta, eventually come to jnana yoga. It's not supposed to cause me to keep waving my hands, doing puja, doing mantras, doing japa, doing all sorts of prayers. It's supposed to cause me to see, so what? I just keep doing this one more time, it's never going to end. So then the person comes to the Vedanta. Okay, so why do they come to jnanam? Because they realize the fundamental problem is ignorance. And what opposes ignorance? Does action oppose ignorance? What opposes ignorance? If you don't know how to make a dosa, then you need knowledge, right? Right, exactly. But the point is, I'm Googling for knowledge so that I can apply that knowledge and then remove my ignorance pertaining to making a dosa. Okay. Shankaracharya in Atma Bodha made a very nice statement. He said, if you're in a dark room, we'll turn off the lights, and the whole point is to bring light in. Now, suppose you go in and you do pranayama, right, in the hopes to remove the darkness. And you do pranayama for 2 years, maybe do some kriya yoga, all of the institutions, karma yoga, you do a lot of service, you build other people's ashrams, you do tons of chanting, you do like Vishnu, Sahasranama, right? So many things you do, and you even do some yoga asanas, right? Why not? You throw that in too. Are you going to bring light into the room? No. So now, what is the only one solution to take care of the fundamental problem, which is darkness? Only one solution. Exactly. Bring a lamp. In this case, it's a lamp. They didn't have electricity back then. In other words, bring a lamp so that I can address the fundamental problem of removing darkness. So what is the only possibility of removing ignorance which leads to moksha? Bring in knowledge so that the buddhi is clear. Therefore, the only solution is jnana yoga. And that is what bhakti is supposed to culminate to, self-knowledge. Now we spoke of 3 attitudes. Next topic. 3 attitudes of worship. First one is Eka Rupa. That means one form. Eka Rupa means personal, customized deity. My God, your God. Mine is Jesus, yours is Allah, yours is Krishna, yours is Rama, yours is Saraswati. Okay, so we're all different. And in this case, the attitude is, I am apart from my deity. My deity is big, I am small. And I have to please my deity, I have to worship him because he's at some point, I don't know where. But there's a general difference between the devotee and the devoted. The devoted is the deity. The next one is Aneka Rupa or Vishvarupa. If Eka Rupa means one, then Aneka means, right, many. Vishvarupa means many. In other words, Ishwara is in all forms. Tree, bird, sky, right, no matter who you look at, the Ishwara is everywhere. So in this case, there's not so much conflict anymore. Right? Like, he's also in Jesus, he's also in Rama, he's also in Vishnu, he's also in Ganapati, he's everywhere. So this person worships all Ishwara as all manifestation. Okay? Third category, which is Arupa, no form. Now Arupa is the highest worship attitude. It consists of 2 stages. The first stage of Arupa attitude involves the desire to, we spoke about the word merge, to merge with Ishwara, to discover how there is no difference between self and the whole. That's the first stage, so there's a desire. After that desire has taken place through Jnana Yoga, then the Jnani, the liberated person, continues, if they wish, to worship, no problem. Shankaracharya was one of the greatest Bhaktas you will find. Why? Because they understand that all that is here is one without a second. Therefore, worshipping form does not contradict vision of oneness. It does not contradict Advaita Vedanta. Because whatever forms I worship, I'm ultimately worshipping the content of all forms, which is Brahman. Okay, now 3 levels of sadhana. 3 levels, new topic. First, Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is worshipping the whole. That means I understand that everything here is interconnected. Therefore, I no longer have a need to just worship, myself or my own desires, but because the person understands whatever action I put out into the field, everything's interconnected. Therefore, I am affecting not only one little person, but I'm also affecting their family, and their family is also going to come across to someone because they're going to be cheerful. So it's going to affect a whole generation of people. So every action that you do is devoted to the whole. One is devoting all your actions to the whole, and the second is you no longer have expectations of a particular result. Why? Because you know that all of your results are ordained how? By the whole. I do not control the variables that are going on in this world. I can only do so much, but I actually don't know what's going to come back. That's the reality. So the person releases the need of certain expectations coming back. So this relieves the person from constant disappointment on an emotional roller coaster in life. When something good happens, they're up in the sky, but then there's always that opposite side. When something doesn't turn out, then they're like deflated. So the person lets that go. Then number 2 is upasana. Okay, upasana means mental activity. Now, what is mental activity? In the context of Vedanta, meditating on, contemplating about, thinking of Saguna Ishwara. That means Ishwara with attributes. Now, this upasana is divided into 2 categories. Okay, so we have upasana, saguna, and nirguna. Okay, now saguna is doing what? It is contemplating on, meditating on, thinking about Saguna Ishwara for the sake of material gains here and thereafter. For example, Brahmaloka. And Nirguna is meditating on, thinking about, contemplating on Saguna Ishwara for the sake of purifying the mind so that I may come to nirguna jnanam. Because their vision is what? I need a pure mind for the sake of understanding jnana yoga. Okay, is that clear? So their focus is different. Now the third one, the highest, after having done karma yoga, remember there's no skipping here. After having done karma yoga, whether it's in this life or past life, after having gone through upasana, that means contemplating upon the features of Ishwara, beautiful, all loving, benevolent, then person comes to the highest sadhana, which is Vedanta vichara. Vichara means self-inquiry. Okay, now when I say self-inquiry, all I'm talking about is Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. In other words, Jnana Yoga. Okay? So Karma Yoga, Upasana, and Vedanta Vichara. Now, next question you're going to ask is this. This is a very important question. And it's valid for most of us sooner or later.
This wasn't quite clear with your Upasana. If you said that there's one stream that is thinking about features and one without. Is it without or both of those are with?
Yeah, because they're both ajnanis, so they're both well, even with a feature, it's still a concept, okay? So one's thinking, for example, what does it mean to say nirgunam, right? What does it mean to say all-pervading? So for them, they're thinking about the idea of nirgunam, the concept of nirgunam. It is not, it's still a concept. So in actuality, they're both thinking about Saguna. Okay, except this one is thinking about for the sake of accumulating, hoarding, for myself. But this one's thinking about all of these ideas that I have to firstly at least get used to, right? It's to start entertaining at least, so that I can feel more, attracted to this jnana yoga. Because it's true, right? The more you think about something, the more you feel attracted, the more you pursue that topic. Okay.
So even Atma-related thoughts, such as all-pervasive, limitless, is still sagunam because it's a thought.
Yeah, but that's a very good point. That leads to eventually prepares the mind for nirguna jnanam, because that's exactly the kind of thoughts you need to have in order to have a pure mind, so that you come out of this stage and pursue jnana yoga, which we are doing every Tuesday. Okay. Also remember, important point. Upasana has still not come to Vedanta Vichara, okay? So that question is very close. It's almost like in between here, right? But mostly we'll put that in the Vedanta Vichara, because Upasana is still interested in sort of like, they haven't heard the knowledge. So they're not really thinking about Nirgunam, Nirvikalpa, Nirvikara. They're not thinking about this yet. Okay? Now, I said, important question you're going to ask. Because remember, everyone's a devotee, whether they're a jnani or not. You're going to say, what kind of actions qualify for a bhakta? In other words, what is the best kind of action to do that would qualify as perfect bhakti? There is no perfect action, because every action is limited in its nature. So what's important? The intention behind the action. Now, if this is really understood well, this should bring great relief. You should never again ask, what should I do in this world? Should I be going out there and saving people, making big things happen? No, it's all the intention behind your action. A person helping someone else, if their intention is genuine, will do so much more for their, their punya karma in their mind than one who's being out there and saving people and giving charity. And I donated, by the way, right? All of that is intention is incorrect. So the intention matters. For example, suppose two parents get a gift from a child. Do the parents care about the quality and the cost of the gift as much as they care or they noticed of the love with which the gift is brought to the parents? Which one? What do the parents notice? The love which the child has brought this gift to either mommy or daddy or both is what melts the parents' hearts. It's not, oh, okay, so you spend $1,000. Interesting, you love us a lot. That's not the point. In other words, the child doesn't have to do anything special because their intention is genuine. They want to please mommy and daddy. They did it to the best of their capacity with whatever money they had, but the point is the parent doesn't even notice that. They just notice the innocent provision, the innocent giving of the child. So the point is you don't have to do anything special to please Ishwara, for the sake of purifying the mind. Anything. Or another example is, suppose the baby who doesn't know anything, and the baby wants to get the attention of dad. Does the baby have to strategically think which part of the limb to touch in order to get daddy's attention? No. The baby just has to do what? Wah. No matter what tone, right, what volume, what sound, what speed, what part of the body it touches, the daddy understands. The baby wants my attention. And we're talking about a daddy who is limited individual, a limited mind. Now, let alone Ishwara, all knowledge, all power. How much is this question, what do I have to do? Do you see what I mean? Absolutely out of the question. A genuine desire for liberation, for happiness, for contentment, it is heard. You don't have to worry about, am I being heard, am I being ignored? That is out of the question. Another example is, you're going to say, how is it possible that so many kinds of worships in this world are heard? Right? Because people have different worships. People in the Middle East worship differently from those who are of a different nature or race or Guna composition. How is it possible that all of these are genuinely heard by the whole? Very easy. Suppose that there is a dream worshipper. They're having a dream. And there is a dream yajna, right? They're performing a dream worship. There are dream materials. So they're taking some ghee, they're taking some candles, they're taking some flowers. All of it is made out of the same dream. They have a dream fire, right, for the oblation. They have dream mantras, okay? All of it is in the dream. And all of it is pervaded by what? The one same waker's mind. That means no matter what the person did, whether there was a character in the Middle East who was performing a yajna with a certain type, or a yajna with a different type in China or some different country, both of them were pervaded by the one waker's mind alone. Now, going back to that chart that I said here, what is the truth of every single form, no matter which way you look at it? All knowledge, all power. And wherever there is form, there is all knowledge, all power. And what is the truth of all knowledge, all power? Brahman. Therefore, all that is here is one without a second. Verse 20 to 29. Okay, previous three Bhakti levels talked about Sadhana. These two levels will be based on motives. What is my motive will depend on what kind of Bhakti I perform. There are two types. The first is Sakama Bhakti. See, now we go on to the Sakama part. Sakama Bhakti is Bhakti according to Raga Dvesha. My worship is according to my likes and dislikes. And this kind of Bhakti gives infinite, finite results. Why? Because what is Sakama? Finite goals. So as many goals, as many results. And when is one goal infinite? Never, right? Because there's always another goal. So I've got infinite goals, therefore I have infinite, finite results, because no goal gives you an infinite result. This person is following the path of Preyaha. Path of Preyaha is the path of the pleasant. Anything that brings immediate gratification, that is easy, that requires a little bit of worldly knowledge to attain. This path reveals the person's absence of dispassion and discrimination. Because if they had dispassion and discrimination, they wouldn't be chasing for what? Finite goals. Why? Because they would know that no finite goal can bring an infinite result. Okay, so in this case, life is a series of ups and downs. Now, second type is Nishkama Bhakti. This is the path of Shreyaha, path of the noble, wise. non-compromise path, the path of not compromising. I used this example last week, where even though I can compromise my values in order to get the easy way out, this person does not do that no matter what. And this person understands that all permanent security, freedom, contentment only lies in one single principle, which is para prakriti only. Therefore, all of their bhakti goes where? Into para prakriti jnanam. In other words, into jnana yoga. All of their worship, all of their time, all of their effort goes where? Into Vedanta vichara, into shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam. Also, most importantly, is this person progresses quickly because they understand that every sadhana is only a means to an end. Now, this is important because most of us get attached to our sadhana. And we end up investing most of our time in, say, kirtanam, in meditation. That's also, remember, chapter 6. That's also a means to an end. In japa, into puja. In other words, they're able to quickly detach from their sadhana in order to move on to a higher sadhana. And what's the highest sadhana possible? Nididhyasanam. Remember? Shravanam, mananam, and nididhyasanam. Now, how do we explain this? We'll just use an example. A mom is a great example because, for some reason, a mom feeds a child. A mom feeds a child with her own milk, okay, from her own body, but not permanently. When the child grows up sufficiently, when they mature to a certain age, mom automatically stops and gives a food appropriate for the new stage of the child's life. Why? Because the mom knows the milk is no longer appropriate. I need to let go of that sadhana, and then I have to give the child a new food because it's there to give them nutrition based on the new level where they're at. In other words, what's the lesson? One has to have the capacity to dispassionately detach from their sadhana in order to move on to and put all of their time in jnana yoga. Lastly, nishkama bhakti gives one infinite result. Remember, sakama bhakti gives infinite, finite results, and this one gives one infinite result. Verse 30 to 34. Glory of bhakti, we talked about last week. Now, one important point is obstacle to bhakti, which is guilt. That comes up often. Now, why does this come? Because the person recognizes, they go, wow, in order to live a noble life, the path of shreya, the path of nishkama, I need some good merit. I need punya karma, I need a clear mind. But I feel guilty because based when I was a child, I did so many wrong things. I bullied people, I stole things, I sweared, I left, rude comments on other traditions. All of these things, I'm not talking about myself, by the way, I'm just giving you examples. I did all of these things, and now this guilt sort of builds up, and the person feels like they're not worth it. And this destroys the person's confidence, and it affects their ability or motivation to continue contemplating, thinking, I'm not worth it. Right? This belongs to those people like Ramana Maharishi or the big greats. But me, I'm just an ordinary Westerner. I don't deserve this. So this is a mental thought that has to be released as soon as possible. And Krishna gives two reasons why. The first reason why the person should drop guilt is because the moment one chooses to change for the better, they are called a sadhu purusha, a good person. Because remember, the person had no choice. They didn't have knowledge back then. They were limited to doing stupid things. So therefore, they cannot feel guilty on the basis of beginningless ignorance. They have to understand, I was not born with knowledge. Nobody showed me a book. If they did, and I had enough, sense, I would have read. But I didn't because I was immature. Now, the second reason is because Ishwara's laws are impartial to all. For example, food gets digested and rain falls for both a sinner and a saint, a spiritualist and a materialist, a poor person and a rich person. In other words, Ishwara doesn't suddenly take away digestive juice from Hitler and go there, you know. Another way to look at this is, if you, for example, look at fire, okay, imagine it's very cold, even though it's very hard to imagine this right now. Imagine it's very cold outside, and we go around the fire. Now, fire does what? Fire's job, fire's nature is to heat, it's to warm. It is innocent to its nature. It cannot do anything other than heat, just like nature of awareness is to illumine. And those who come near the fire are going to warm themselves up. They're going to reap the benefits. They're going to enjoy the warmth, have a nice conversation. We even do some Vedanta around the fire. Their lives is going to transform. Why? Because they're using fire how it's meant to be used. They're not disrespecting the fire by putting their hand in or, you know, burning themselves. Now, what happens to those who choose to move away from the fire, who choose to distance themselves from the fire, and it's very cold? They shiver. In other words, fire doesn't care. Fire is impartial whether I am using fire, whether I am borrowing fire's benefits or I am pushing fire away. In the same way, Ishwara's laws and orders do not care whether the person is disrespecting Ishwara, sending, you know, bad posts, or, you know, worshipping. It is all the same to all knowledge, all power, which remains impartial. We have an example of this with Arjuna. Arjuna kept what? He moved closer to Krishna. He was with Krishna. Why? Because Krishna represents all knowledge, all power, Ishwara. And what did Duryodhana do? No matter how much he cheated, burned the, you know, the wax house burning, you know, and disrobing, so many things he did that is unfair, unjust, that is just outright nonsensical. And yet what happened? Because Duryodhana did not move closer, he ultimately perished. In the same way, anyone who does not come to the truth, who keeps distancing themselves into Sakama Bhakti or, you know, the general worldly entertainments, will ultimately pay the price. Another obstacle to self-knowledge is a highly emotional nature. It's over-dependence, over-attached, very needy. I need you, you're the love of my life. And I don't just mean with a partner, I just mean as in with anything, you know, with the house or a car or, you know, knowledge of certain type. We said last week to always remain humble even after knowledge takes place. This is the most important. Even to enjoy the benefits of self-knowledge, and I still need Ishwara. In other words, Ishwara was always helping. It was only in the presence of Ishwara that all knowledge can take place, and it is still in the presence of Ishwara that the jnani's body still gets to enjoy health and success, general success in life. Okay, so never forget that all of this is only possible because of all of these orders and laws that are inherent, which are there helping me to sustain this knowledge and be clear. And even the health of the body is very important. Thus concludes chapter 9. Now, your homework is the Varna system is going to help you see how society operates in this world. And I'm going to guide you just quickly. Now, the Varna system is a universal categorization system. Don't think of it as a caste system isolated to India. That is an incorrect understanding. It applies to everyone based on the 3 guna composition of every individual. For example, you can first of all look at this as an attitude of the mind. Now, your homework would be to generally study the society, whoever you see, and try to see whereabout would it fit according to this chart, just for some practice. For example, we have a Brahmana. Brahmanas are the ones who are knowledge-oriented. They love knowledge. They're far-sighted. They have this big vision, right? They're able to see in the distance. They're very self-disciplined, and what matters to them most is peace. Refuse to get into arguments, into confrontations, so always hold a very peaceful, tranquil environment. They are the thinkers, visionaries, and so on. Now, the important part is this, the bottom chart. This is an approximation of the percentage of their guna composition. So the reason why the Brahmanas are knowledge-oriented is because most of their guna is sattva guna, and then a little bit of raja and a little bit of tama. Now, last week, I said that both kshatriya and vaishya are both dynamic. They're both extroverted. Remember that? But I said that the kshatriya is selflessly extroverted, but the vaishya is decently selfishly extroverted. Why? Because they have the same 60% raja guna, which is an energy of extroversion, doing something, energy. The only difference is the vaishya has a lot more tamaguna, which makes them a lot more tamasic. Okay, so this is going to help you with understanding the world a little bit better.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.